Hi, this is Wayne Rivers from the Family Business Institute. Today we want to ask the question, is your family business built to last? Now this is a double-edged question. I wish I had the book to hold up and show you. My book seemed to go missing. Built to Last was a really influential book that was written by Jim Collins, and it came out in 2004. Doesn't seem like that long ago, but there it is. And then he followed that up with Good to Great, which is one of the all-time best-selling business books. Both of my books have gone missing. I would hold them up and show you the graphics, but we don't have them. So there it is. But very influential book, and it made me start thinking about, is your family business built to last? And I'll get to that point in a minute. But I remember as a kid, one of the great pleasures about this time of the year, it's early December, was getting that giant Montgomery Ward catalog, or that giant Sears catalog for all the Christmas gifts. And we would sit down, me and my brothers, and we would look through, and we would say to Mom and Dad, I want this, I want this, I want this. And of course, Santa Claus sometimes paid off and sometimes Santa Claus didn't. But anyway, it was great fun, a great source of excitement to get those catalogs. Well, Montgomery Ward's not around anymore. And some other things that I think about, other companies that I remember from my childhood, RCA. We had a big old RCA television. Our first big color television was an RCA, and that company was just really something. Schlitz beer. The Schlitz beer commercials were all over. Stroh's beer too. All over TV when I was a kid growing up in the 60s and 70s. My first airline flight when I was a grown-up was on Eastern Airlines. COMPAQ was the first company that became household name type for PCs, desktop PCs. That was one of the very first ones. Max Factor makeup. I remember my mom, would have that Max Factor logo. Oldsmobile, Pontiac, right? So our family car when I was a kid was a Pontiac. All these companies are gone now. And according to Jim Collins, they weren't built to last. They weren't visionary companies. Now, they thought they were doing the right thing. They had an army of MBAs, and they had motivated people and really super talented people throughout the organization, but for whatever reason, Jim Collins would say they weren't built to last. So he did this big study, and the book came out in 2004, and what he wanted to do was study what he called visionary companies. These were companies that had really sustained, excellent financial performance over a long period of time, and they were primarily Fortune 500 companies. If you were to apply the built to last criteria to those same companies today, of the 18 companies that were visionary and that were extolled as you need to do this, of the 18 companies, 15 would not qualify to be visionary today. We're 12 years later. What happened? Well, and what I'm saying to you is this. I don't know what happened, by the way, but what I'm saying to you is this. It's tough. It's tough to be a go, grow company. It's tough to sustain excellence. There's a reason that the same team doesn't win the World Series every year. The same team doesn't repeat as the Super Bowl champ. It is hard to sustain excellence. When my wife and I were younger and we finally started to have a couple nickels left over after we paid for groceries, we started to figure out, well, we need to invest our money somehow, so we started looking at mutual funds. And I tried to learn all I could about mutual funds, and I read this report, and it's always stuck with me, and that is that, when you're evaluating mutual funds, you look at 1, 3, 5, and 10-year performance, and you try to find somebody who's a good, solid, consistent performer. But one of the things I read was, in a big study, was that if you were in the top quartile, if a money manager, a mutual fund manager, was in the top quartile of performance for 5 years, by the way, they looked at 10-year rolling segments. So if you were in the top quartile during that first 5 years of that rolling 10-year segment, chances are there's about an 80% chance you were going to be in the bottom quartile of performance for the succeeding 5 years. I mean, it's really rather shocking because we all want to try to pick winners. We try to pick the people that perform the best in the mutual fund world, and apparently in the world of Fortune 500 companies. Being the best for X number of years almost dictates that you're going to be among the worst performers in the next succeeding period of years. Now, you might say one of the reasons that, one of the big differences between family companies and Fortune 500 companies is a CEO in a Fortune 500 company might last 4 or 5 years. In a family business, the average tenure is 25 years, plus or minus 24, 25. But that also is a trigger point, it's an inflection point, because we know, the statistics tell us, that about 70% of family businesses fail in that transition from G1 to G2. So right away we know, okay, great, it's not a 5-year half-life for performance. Maybe it's a 25-year half-life for performance in the family business world. But at transition time, at succession time, more tend to fail than continue to succeed. All right, so what can you do? So this is all bad news. We're talking about reasons that you're not going to succeed. What can you do to succeed? And I think there's about 5 things that you really should be doing to truly have a sustainable success as a family business. The first thing is avoid complacency and hubris. We do all these surveys with our client companies, and they come back, and one of the questions is, what needs to change in your organization to keep you on top? And we always see people come back, nothing needs to change, we don't need to do anything different. And every time I see that, red lights go off, because it just stinks of complacency to me, that people aren't engaging their minds to see what needs to be improved. There's always something to improve, right? So, I know I'm dating myself, but when Tiger Woods was the best golfer in the world, do you think he just went to practice and said, I'm going to do the same thing? But no, he kept hiring different coaches and trying different exercise regimens and nutrition regimens and all those things. And, maybe Tiger Woods isn't the best example today, but my point is that even though he was clearly the best in the world, he never stopped trying to be better. And I think as a family business, you should never stop trying to be better. You've always got to be changing, learning, growing, improving. Find something that you could and should be doing better, whether it's customer satisfaction or employee morale or gross profit. I mean, pick something. There's always something that you can make better. The second thing that you should do to prompt this kind of constant and never-ending improvement thinking is you should find a way to challenge yourself. So whether it's from joining a peer group, whether it is finding a family business advisory board member that's outside the family that could really challenge you, whether it's hiring a really talented new CFO or chief operations guy, whatever it happens to be, find ways to let other smart, engaged human beings challenge you in a tasteful way, of course. The third thing is you need to really improve your decision making. One of the dangers that we see for family businesses going forward is when they get into generations 2, 3, 4, etc. Generation 1 can make decisions on the fly. Generation 1 has it all right here, and they're going to make decisions right, wrong, or indifferent. But when it gets to generation 2, well, now we're thinking, how's this going to affect mom? How's this going to affect dad? How's this going to affect my sister? How's this going to affect my brother-in-law? And we all get together and we try to make decisions, and many, many, many families simply decide not to decide. And I think this is the biggest threat. You've heard me say this before, when we got into the family business, it was all Generation 1 dads trying to transition their companies down to Generation 2. Well, now more and more often, I would say more than 50% of the time, we're dealing with Generation 2 and 3 companies. And we see this horrible lack of capable decision making. They're just terrible at it. So after the first of the year, we're going to have maybe the most important thing I've ever written. It's a white paper that details the problems with family business decision making and gives you a very explicit path to learning to make collaborative decisions in a fairly easy, a clear, and a fairly fast way. Fast is ultimately very important. Getting decisions made, boom, 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 and moving on, critical for your success as a family business. So be on the lookout for that white paper after the first of the year. The fourth thing, do your strategic planning every year. I heard a guy recently, his peer group, sorry, but there again, I learned so much from these guys. His peer group said, you need to come up with a strategic plan. And the guy's response was, oh yeah, we did that about 5 or 6 years ago. I'll just pull that off the shelf and dust it off. And he's got a totally different management team today than he did 5 or 6 years ago. He wasn't even president of the company 5 or 6 years ago. He's going to update the numbers? Seriously? He's going to do a top-down strategic plan. I'm going to pull it off the shelf. I'm going to adjust the numbers with my controller. And the young people, the rising talent in the organization isn't going to participate in the process at all. When you do strategic planning, it needs to be bottom up. It needs to come from the bottom of your organization. You need to engage everybody, not on the strategic planning project team necessarily, but you need to get input. What needs to change? What do we need to do better? Where are we deficient? Where do you see the competition outpacing us? Your people have ideas and opinions on these things. You can learn a lot, but you just have to ask them. So do strategic planning every year and let it be a bottom-up process, not a top-down process that the senior leaders try to impose on everybody else. In your strategic planning, this is the fifth point, focus on risk management. What are the threats that could derail your progress over the next few years? What are the barriers that are going to hold you back? What do you need to do better? What technology? Is your industry ripe for disruption? Like if you're in the taxi cab industry, all of a sudden Uber is cleaning your clock, and who saw that coming? So you've got to look out into the future and figure out what the threats are. Otherwise, you won't know in what direction to move. So those are things that can help you be a more sustainable business. Number one, avoid hubris. And basically, the key thing, if I would say anything else, is do long-term planning. Get your best brains together in your organization and come up with a business plan every year with an eye towards risk management that is a bottom-up, bubble-up type of effort on the part of you and your key leaders. All right. Thank you very much. Wayne Rivers from the Family Business Institute. Let us hear your comments below. We appreciate it.